I just drilled that hole a little bit deeper. You can see that goes somewhere else now for my tap to go. So here we go, we'll tap it. This is a tap wrench. Holds the tap. Get our view closer again. Gonna squeeze my fence part in the vise, because this tap works kind of like a wedge. Okay, I'm going to push it down in that hole and begin turning. And push hard, turn hard. And it's wedging that wood and wants to make it expand. So I found on skinny boards like this, when you're tapping, it's a good idea to clamp it in the vise. And that way it keeps the wood from splitting. The vices help holding it together. So I push and turn, push and turn. And I'm going to go down to the point where pretty much until those threads on the tap disappear. Come on, camera. There we go. Change directions of turning helps clean out the threads a little bit. So now you can see why I needed that hole at the bottom of our other hole. Just room for that pilot to go. Now we'll unwind it. You can see the red sawdust from that Padauk wood. And now fits perfectly for the locking knob. So you can see it poking out there. That's going to work great. Get rid of the little chips. So now that will fit in there. And when we need to lock it in place, we just tighten that, and now that will not slide because it's being squeezed, kind of like a clamp. All right, next. This gets chewed up a little bit by the tap, so I like to take a little bit of rough sandpaper, which I don't seem to see right here. I'll just grab this medium. I'm gonna shape it in like a cone and just use that sandpaper to take off that rough edge, top of that. Okay, now we're gonna make the locking knob. Ours is gonna be made of birch wood. It's gonna look a little bit different. So to make this, I need a 1/2-inch dowel. Here I have a chunk of 1/2-inch dowel. And I've bought a lot of dowels in my days. This one I noticed isn't really very round. You can actually see a ridge right there. Okay, it wasn't really very round, so on the end of this dowel, I've been kind of sanding that ridge away. In other words, the dowel was kind of shaped like an egg. It's supposed to be round, right? Well, you get what you pay for, I guess. You buy a bunch of these, then you discover when you get home, hey, I bought a not very round chunk of dowel. So this is a piece of birch wood, B-I-R-C-H. Birch is a hardwood, I believe, it's a hardwood. And it's a 1/2 inch around. I use a tool called a thread cutter to cut these threads. So we got inside threads on the fence. We'll have outside threads on the locking knob. This gadget, I think you're gonna like. I've had this thing for years. This is a Beal, that's the company name, B-E-A-L-L-E, sorry, no E, B-E-A-L-L, Beal Tool Company. Look them up online, it's kind of interesting. Basically, there's a hole here, push the dowel in, halfway through the hole, this is like a miniature router. Halfway through the hole is a very pointy router bit, shaped kind of like a point. And that point is what cuts the grooves in the dowel. So this is called a laminate trimmer. Laminate, L-A-M-I-N-A-T-E, laminate trimmer. Maybe it's L-A-M-I-N-A-N-T, laminate. But I can put different size fixtures here. This one's 1/2 inch. I can go up to 1 inch to make a 1 inch bolt. Then I can go 3/4, a little smaller, 5/8, a little smaller. Then this one's a 1/2 inch. So basically I poke it in the hole, goes in about halfway. The router is going to start cutting a groove when I start spinning. The back part of the hole has threads on it. So it's actually gonna cut threads, and as soon as it cuts them, those threads start feeding itself into here. Then it'll poke out the back side. I'll try to give you a couple views. It's also very noisy. Go over and get my ear protection, ear muffs. We'll get in here a little closer. Might be able to see the small wood chips flying around. Let's take a look at the back side. Eventually it'll start coming out this hole here. And just about the point where it starts to come out this hole, I'm done, because I only need about 1 inch of threads. I like how this laminate trimmer, you can take the motor off of the base. I find if I take the bit out, it's easier to take the dowel out. I'm going to take the camera out for a second. I want to see if I can give you a point of view here. That's where the router bit goes, and you can see way down in there, you can see the threads. So I'm just turning them, unwinding it. There it comes, and there we go. Pretty amazing. Blow the chips off. A little bit of sanding. We've got the external threads. Now we're going to cut this to 2 1/4 inches. So stop at the bench here again. Get my measurement. In fact, I think I'll just cut it right here at the bench. The camera's kind of all over the place, sorry. I want 2 1/4. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller than my original one. This one, I just don't think it needs to be quite as long. That's one thing that happens when you build something over and over again. You realize what you like about it, what you don't like about it. You build another one, it gives you an opportunity, to change your design. Keep experimenting. Hopefully each version you make will continue to work, but as you make the changes, then you discover, hey, I like how that works better, right? I'm going to use a V-block in the vise, because when you clamp a dowel that's round in a square vise, you end up damaging the dowel usually. So I'm just going to use the V block to help hold it, kind of like we do with if you're using a bandsaw. And come on, camera. There we go. I've marked my distance. I'm going to cut left-handed. I am not left-handed. This is a back saw, remember, back saw, add it to your list. That cradle of the V helps hold it. Slow down as you reach the end. Just let it gently fall off. There we go. Oops. And we got a pretty nice little cut there. Now we're going to go over to the sander and clean it up a little bit. I think I'm going to turn the camera off again and while I move the camera. See you in a minute. Okay, this is an oscillating spindle sander. We actually have here at Hillview, we have 3 of them. And each one we have has 3 different drums on it, which is convenient. Instead of having to change out the size of the drum, you can see down here it comes with different sizes that you can interchange. But the luxury of having 3 of these things is you can keep 3 different sizes on here. Oscillating spindle sander. Just putting a little bit of a chamfer, I guess you'd call it, on that end. Just rotating it in my hand. Also take this sharp edge off. You could certainly do this with a file. You could do the same thing with sandpaper. You could even use a sharp knife if you're careful and just kind of carve away that edge, but that makes it look a little cleaner. And now to make this a little more grippy, to be able to twist with your fingers, I'm just gonna sand out 2 like half circles. Not half circles, partial circles. And this is a 1-inch spindle sander here. There we go. You could also do this with a file, couldn't you? Or wrapping sandpaper around a dowel. Just going to rotate it half a turn. It's kind of like sculpting. I'm just kind of looking at it, seeing if I like it. Go back. Just takes a little practice. There we go. That gives you something to kind of squeeze on when you're putting twisting force on the locking knob. And it looks kind of cool. You can even that out. I can see it's a little uneven on this side. Oh, not too bad. Okay, back to the bench. Okay, so we got the fence, our stem, and our locking knob. 3 different species of wood. We got Padauk, Walnut, and Birch. I like the different colors. Sometimes you want all the same species, looks all the same color. Sometimes you don't. Okay. Next, I'm just going to add kind of a circle on the bottom of that fence. This, of course, is a compass. We've seen these before and talked about them. I want the bottom of this to have a little curve shape in it. I'm not really sure why. I just think it looks good. You could certainly leave it square, whatever shape you want. Fairly common to leave a curve in them. This older one is kind of curved on both sides, and much, much smaller fence. I kind of like to have a little bit larger fence. Okay, so I'm going to set the compass on this center line that I have, right on the end there, and make that radius. That looks like it's about a little over 3-inch radius. And that's probably not showing up in the video very well. Let me shade it in with the white pencil. Okay. Now what to use to cut that? Oh gosh, many things. Coping saw would work. I could even clamp this down and cut off the majority of the corners with a saw. Come back with sandpaper or a file and smooth that out. I could even use a block plane and just keep planing that angle. I could even use a chisel by either chiseling straight down, just start on the corner and just keep working my way back and tapping it with a mallet. I'm gonna do it the easier, a little faster way. We're gonna use the bandsaw and the disc sander. There we go. Rip fence is already set. In fact, it's set from the last time I cut this for another class. Get you right in here so you can get a good view. On a disc sander, it's important to keep your wood flat. The disc is going around. It's going to be pushing my work into the table. I always want to keep my work moving, otherwise it can get overheated because the disc is moving so fast. Just take it right up to the line. One really nice thing about a tool like this is the sandpaper is 90 degrees to the table. That makes this surface perfectly 90 degrees to this surface. Okay, but when needed, like the bandsaw table, you can tilt the table backwards at an angle to sand at different angles. I could loosen the knobs in the tables. The table could tilt if I wanted to sand it at an angle. Kind of designing as I go on this part. Really not, I'm going to shape the top edge. I could leave it flat, it would work. I just want to make it a little more interesting. So I'm going to try to do a little bit of an arc in the middle. I'm going to flatten this out a little on the ends. I don't know what I'd call this shape. Relief cuts. Again, leaving my pencil line. Not cutting on the pencil line. sure you can see. Going to use this nice sharp chisel. I'm trying to get rid of the saw marks left by the bandsaw blade. And yeah, I could sand them. You notice I'm skewing this chisel, which means I'm not coming directly straight with the chisel. I'm kind of coming at it at an angle. And that is because it's easier to push. And I'm not taking a very deep cut. I'm not removing a lot of wood. I'm just trying to smooth the surface out. The shape is right. Just trying to get rid of some of the saw marks. It's easier to do coming from this direction for me. And I'm also working downhill on this curve. It's about going with the way the grain wants to go. I'm mostly chopping across the grain, but by skewing the chisel, skew, S-K-E-W, it allows you to push the chisel a little easier because the geometry of the cut, it's physics. It's just easier. It's like a wedge. And it actually makes it cut more smoothly. And now very little work as far as sandpaper goes. I've lost my sandpaper. Particularly on these edges, because that feels sharp. Got a little chipping around the hole there going on. And now try to smooth out this flat part. Be easier for me to change my angle. That way, can you still see? Yep. Again, all I'm trying to do really is just take off a light cut to try to get rid of the marks left by the bandsaw blade. Little slicing cut here. Always have two hands on that chisel, remember? Going across the grain here, then going with the grain here. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that shape? Maybe in the comments you can let me know if you like the way that looks. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's better as an idea than the way it looks now. It also looks a little bit uneven on each side, but it should work as a marking gauge. I'd say at this point, all my shaping is done. So I'll spend some time sanding it smooth, particularly on these corners, anywhere there's a sharp edge. I'll try to get rid of my pencil marks. You don't want those to show. You know, make it look a little more classy. Then I will probably finish this, maybe I'll videotape it, adding some, probably like oil to it, maybe a Danish oil or a linseed oil. It's a common way to protect a tool, is to put a little oil on it. Looks pretty for one thing, and it kind of keeps the wood from drying out over time, and because if it dries out too much, it can crack and split. So that's looking pretty good. We need to still cut and chisel out the place for the blade. I'm going to use a blade on this one.